This podcast is part of the Telerik Developer Network. Telerik, a progress company. Hello and welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. I'm your host, Ed Charbonneau, and with me today is Alex Bezushka and Eric Lathrop. And this episode is Weekend Warriors game development.
Hey, I'm Alex.
And I'm Eric.
And I'm Ed Charbonneau, and today we're going to be talking about Weekend Warriors game development. And what a Weekend Warrior is somebody that's got a hobby that they are very passionate about, so they spend their entire weekends doing whatever that hobby is as much as possible. And these two guys here do a lot of game development. They run a company called Two Scoop Games here in Louisville, Kentucky, and we are at the Ludum Dare 32.
Yeah.
And we're at the event recording this podcast. What are you guys doing at the Ludum Dare today?
We're building a game in 48 hours.
It's a international competition. There's usually about 2,000 game developers around the world making a game from scratch over the weekend. And we have a physical version of that here. Like most people do it online, but we have, as part of Game Dev Lou, our local game development community here in Louisville, about 12 game developers here making 5 games from scratch this weekend.
So with the Ludum Dare, is there like a challenge involved? Do you get a special like set of requirements given to you, or you just come up with your own idea?
So there's 2 parts to it. There's the compo, which is a single person doing a jam game in 48 hours, and there's the jam, which is a team doing the game in 72 hours. And you're given a theme at the beginning of the game jam on Friday, and by 9 p.m. on Sunday you have to create a game.
What's the theme for this this dare?
An unconventional weapon.
Unconventional weapon. And you guys came up with.
Our game is about a carrot.
Yeah, you play as a carrot, and you are the weapon.
That's awesome. What I like about the challenge is that it gets you thinking outside the box, and you end up making something that you probably wouldn't have thought of making on your own.
Definitely not.
Yeah. We tend to do these game jams every couple of months. We do about 4 a year, and each one we kind of like focus on a little area of game development that we don't know well, and we try and build up our skill in that one little area. So like over time we get better and better.
So what got y'all into this? I know when I was like a kid, I was like totally into video games, and then I always wanted to learn how they were made, and I spent a lot of time when I was a teenager making levels for like Doom and Counter-Strike and Half-Life, and almost took a career in game development. So did you guys go down that kind of path? Did you, were you gamers as kids and that got you into software?
I definitely was. Like I started programming when I was maybe 10 years old or something. I had a hand-me-down computer from my uncle, and it had a slot machine program in the instructions in BASIC. And I typed it in and made it work, and then I wanted to cheat the game, so I edited the code to make it cheat. And then from there on, just like always, like I grew up with computers and video games at the same time, and always made video games like throughout my whole career.
And I started off with Super Nintendo, and from the moment that I played Super Mario World and Mario Kart, I knew that somebody had to be making this stuff. I was like 8 years old or something, and I thought, like, somebody is drawing this stuff and creating it, and I want to be a part of that. And ever since then, I wanted to make games, and I started from a different path. I did drawing and art and graphic design, and eventually got kind of discouraged. I couldn't do it because all the big companies have you working on big teams of 1,000 people, and I would get stuck making a tree or something, and I wouldn't have any say in the game.
Yeah.
And so I kind of gave up on my dream. And I was doing web design, which is something I really am passionate about also. And then I just recently, in the last couple of years, thought that I could start making games again. Now with being able to to sell your stuff or put it online yourself easily, and you can have small teams making projects and that real people will actually get to play.
Is that when you two started Two Scoop Games?
Yeah, so we've been working together for just over a year now, and we met at a JavaScript meetup, and Eric was working on a little rooftop runner kind of game, like Cannibalt or something, and he was making it with JavaScript, Canvas, HTML5 stuff.
Actually, it was Thanksgiving, and I was home for the holiday visiting my younger brother who was going to college for computer science, and he was complaining that he was bored with the stuff he was learning in college, and I wanted to show him games because we're both gamers, and I sat down with him and said, like, we're going to make the simplest game I can think of, which is an endless runner style game, and I'm going to just teach you how to make a game, and we stayed up till like 4 in the morning making this little game, and that just sort of reawoke the whole like game thing in me. I had kind of like buried it down for a while and not thought about games, and then I started doing it, and then I was doing it at this JavaScript hack night, and Alex saw me, and he was into games, and he decided maybe he could draw some art for it.
Yeah, I was already working on a couple of my own games at the time, but I hadn't really gotten anywhere because I'm not as good of a programmer, and so I have 5 or 6 like barely started projects, and I saw that his game was already pretty much working. It just needed some art.
Yeah, I kind of teeter on the fence myself. I have some artistic skill, not super strong, and then the programming side as well. And I can get so far on my own, but when you have somebody you can team up with that specializes in one or the other, you can really make some cool stuff happen. When I was starting out, I did a lot of level design because I could do the 3D art, and there was some scripting involved to make the levels do what you wanted them to do. So that kind of fit my skills pretty good. I spent so many weekends working on maps for Counter-Strike. That took up a lot of my time, but I learned a lot for the job that I have now, and it applies to development in so many ways. I think gaming's an awesome gateway into software development.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
It's great to have a teammate because, like, I had, like, when we started, or when I always made games, but they were, like, little things, and I was always by myself, and I would always, like, I would do something until I got to a hard part, or until I got bored or whatever, and I would kind of wander off and, forget about the project or whatever. But with having Alex as a teammate, whenever I get bored or I start to struggle with something, like, and I'm having a down moment, he'll be excited about something, and his excitement will get me excited, and it'll reinvigorate me to go and pick up again. And then when he's feeling down, I'll make some new feature in the game, and then that'll get him excited to draw more art. So it's like a great seesaw effect. When you're by yourself, you're just kind of lonely, and there's no one to pick you up when you get down.
I think that's a good way to talk about the community here in Louisville. We have like literally a meetup group almost every single night of the week. Mm-hmm. And maybe you guys can elaborate more on what is the community like here? Why is it important? Obviously, like you just said, meeting people that have skills that fill in the gap where you don't have skills is one reason. What are some of the groups you guys go to, and what are some of the things that you see here in town?
So I was originally looking for some kind of front-end meetup, like a JavaScript meetup or something, and I couldn't find one. So I looked on meetup.com, and I thought maybe I should just start one. And so I started JSLU about a year and a half ago, and I just started going and having meetings, and people showed up, and we have about 10 people show up at every meeting. We have 2 per month. One is a hack night and one is a learn night. And that's how I met Eric and met a bunch of other people. And from there, once we found out that we wanted to do games, we started looking to see if there were any other people doing games or game meetups. And there was a level 1 game dev group. And we talked to them about doing Global Game Jam back in January 2014, and coordinated with Mike, who ran the level 1 game dev group, and we ended up coming and hanging out with other game developers every 2 weeks, and it's been going on ever since then.
And you guys run the JSLU meetup and I know I've seen you guys at the C Sharp, or not C Sharp, but .NET Developer Meetup too. We have so many meetups in Louisville going on like every day of the week almost, and I know they're all across the country, so you can go to those places and you can find people that have superior skill sets where you don't, and you can learn a lot from the community that's around you. It's really good that we have that here.
Yeah, if you're looking for meetups, like meetup.com is the first place you should look, because there's a lot of things, that's where the majority of them are. But there's a surprising number of meetups that aren't on meetup.com because it costs money and some people don't want to pay the money for it. And so here in Louisville, like I've kind of like wanted to go to a lot of meetups, and I've started like tracking them all down and making just a giant list of them. So it's just on gist.github.com, my list of Louisville meetups. But there's not like, there needs to be like just a wiki or something somewhere for like all of the meetups. So like, and for other cities too,
Yeah.
Like, because I moved here and I didn't know anyone, and like, getting involved in the tech scene was hard. And I wish I had the list when I started.
I'd really recommend getting involved with local meetup groups if you're a developer. It's the best way to learn, I think.
Yeah.
There's a lot of motivation to keep your skills up when you see how many talented people there are in your own city.
Yeah, if you're looking to get ahead at work, I mean, if you want to get raises and, move up in your position, that's like one of the best ways to get ahead in the game, is go to meetups, because you meet people that have skills that are, sometimes better than yours, and that's how you get brought up, learn more, is from people that have more experience and things like that. And in addition to meetups, we have a lot of cool like co-working spaces here in Louisville. In Indiana as well, right across the river, we have something called Velocity. It's like a co-working space. But you guys were actually talking about doing some kind of a game co-working space.
Yeah, we're looking to have a home for our game dev group, where we can hang out and work on our games, like in a sort of office space where we're not being interrupted by loud noises or whatever, and where we can host our game jams and do exhibitions of our games that we create. And we're in the early planning stages of that and getting the community involved and trying to figure out what kind of legal entity we need, and we're going to form this thing and rent a space. And Alex knows a lot more about it.
Yeah, right now we're calling it Warp Zone, and I mean, just like you said, we want to have co-working, maybe some small offices or some like open working areas that people can rent, or not rent, but they could pay a membership every month and use that. But it would also be something we want to be open to the public for events or for people who are interested in game development. Basically, the point of it is to make game development seem like a viable career in our city, because I feel like it is, and I know that there are several developers who are making a living off of their games, and it's something that a lot of people are interested in, but they just do it as a hobby, and that's basically what we want to try to promote.
And these hobbies that we have in our network here, if people wanted to get involved with them and, and you guys, how do people find, get into game development on the weekend or after work, or however they want to get started in it? How do they go about that? What's the best way?
I always suggest to people, even though it sounds kind of scary, that game jams are a great way to bust in, because if you pair up with another person, or if you're on a team of people who have already done a couple of games, or anything
if you can find an in-person one.
Yeah,
a lot of them are online only.
if you could find an in-person game jam.
Yeah, if you can find one where there's a group of people like physically meeting in real life, you can find a team and glom onto that team and join and just take their knowledge all weekend long.
Yeah.
So what kind of skill set should I have if I'm going to go in? Should I go like, if I'm not, code heavy, maybe go Code Academy or Treehouse or, Pluralsight, one of those type of things, and learn some development skills? Or maybe if I'm a little on the artistic side, come and show some of my artwork off and maybe team up with somebody to do some, graphics, or
Yeah.
how could I, how would I do that?
There are several major like categories of skills that you could do. I mean, if you're more interested in art, then you could find somebody who's more interested in doing code. Find some people that do music and kind of make a team out of it, which is a really good way to get something done that looks nice and actually.
It sounds nice. I always forget
Yeah.
about the audio part. Sound effects, music, all that stuff plays a part. Normal software development, that might not be something you're thinking about. So,
Yeah.
you're building that application, that line of business application. You might not be thinking about, music and sound effects.
Yeah.
So, you go into a game jam, you kind of need sound
Really-
effects, graphics, programming skills. Are there anything else?
Incorporates everything. I mean, story, sound, art.
Good writing.
Yeah.
The game is 100% UX. It's all about UX. Like,
Yeah,
true,
UX
yeah.
people.
it's
So
all about
they're-
design and the experience of the player and how they interpret what you're putting on the screen and putting out of the mic or out of the speakers.
Yeah, so there's a lot of avenues for people that are interested in games, even if you're not a developer, to get into game programming or game development.
And a lot of people don't get started because they don't have someone to help them do the other part that they're not good at. And so that's one of the major things that we try to do in our community, Game Dev Lou, is to connect people with other people that have the opposite skills or skills that fit together and get that going. But if you're solo and you're on your own and there's nothing in your city, there are lots of online resources. Like if you're going to get started, if you pick an engine or something like Unity or Splat, which is the one that we've been working on, there are tutorials out there that you could find that will show you sample games or show you step by step how to make certain different types of games. There are great podcasts and video tutorials on YouTube and stuff that I've looked at. That's the stuff that I more gravitate towards because I'm more of a visual person. And if you're somebody who can read a book and take a lot from that, there's lots of great game design books. But I would say if you're interested in game design stuff, start with something that's game related because it might hold your attention more than straight up programming. And if you're already a programmer, a lot of the stuff that you already know is going to be really helpful.
Yeah, and I've noticed, almost every language that you could possibly write as a, professional developer in the business sense, C Sharp, JavaScript, you name it, there's probably a game engine or game component that runs that type of language, whether it's scripting or actually coding.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that you just have to find the right engine that meshes up with your skill set. And then, once you learn a couple different programming languages too, they all start to look very similar. Mm-hmm. But Eric, you wrote the Splat game engine. That's JavaScript, right?
Yeah. We've made 6 or 7 or 8 games in the last year and a half or whatever. We've been working on games. And as we've built games, we've kind of extracted and refactored out that technology into a game engine. And it sort of like smooths over a lot of differences between browsers and patches up a bunch of like inconsistent things like in browser support and HTML5 or whatever. So you can just use a feature and like draw a picture or play a sound. And if you have Web Audio API, it'll play it through Web Audio API. And if you don't, it'll play it through the HTML5 audio tag. And if otherwise, it'll just be a no-op. That kind of stuff. It smooths it all over, and it's a pretty basic engine, but it does some of the jQuery stuff, like where it just smooths over the differences for you.
Yeah, and it's all open source, right? You put it open
it's
source.
on GitHub. It's MIT licensed. You can do basically whatever you want with it.
Yeah, and I'll get with you and put show notes up to go with the podcast here and let people find that on GitHub.
All of our games are on GitHub also, and so if you want to look at any of the source code for any of the games that we've created, it's a really great way to see how we did it. And some of those are jam games, so the code might be a little messy because you got to get it done in a weekend. But we've got several of our games up there where you can check them out and pull them apart.
Yeah, they're not technically open source games, but the source is there and you can read it. Like probably shouldn't like fork it and go and put it on a store or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But you can read it and look at all the resources and everything. It's there for you to learn from.
Yeah, and I've played some of the games. They're great. Like one of them is Cyrush, and then is it Charlie Squeaks?
Stanley Squeaks.
Stanley Squeaks.
Yeah.
And I literally just like left my little ones in the other room playing these games, and they were having a blast. So tell us a little bit about those two games and some of the other ones that you guys created with Two Scoops.
Sure.
Or Two Scoop Games, sorry.
We're really excited about Cyrush. That was our first like major kind of a release game. It's a waffle simulator. It's a game if you're obsessive compulsive and you like all of your waffles to be perfect and you want to put the right amount of butter in every hole, this is the game for you. It's a big waffle scrolling by and you have to fill it with all the butter so every hole is filled, and then it goes back and you put syrup on everything, and the waffles get bigger, the toppings get crazier, and you do blueberries and whipped cream, and it's the first game we've asked for money for, so it was a big step in our evolution as a company. Like we were making all these little jam games, and now we're making a full game, and we're asking for money, and we're trying to like be sustainable as a company.
It's a great looking game too.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And you worked on that in like Photoshop or some other tools?
With Cyrush, I did it all with Illustrator. So it's all vector, and then, of course, when it goes into the game, I export it as bitmap. But I started off in Illustrator.
Yeah, it's a nice looking game. And then there's Stanley Squeaks.
Yeah, Stanley Squeaks and the Emerald Burrito. So that started off as a game jam game last year. And the theme was connected worlds, and we were thinking about like past and present, like you're going and exploring this temple, but we made it like an Indiana Jones hamster, and that's going to be our first larger game that we're going to release on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and we're working on that right now along with some other projects that we're doing, and it's really fun to work on a platformer because those were the first type of games that I played. So this is a puzzle platformer, and you're a hamster, and you're exploring this temple, and trying to find the elusive Emerald Burrito, and there's lots of traps and different things that will get in your way, and we've got some interesting puzzle mechanics that a lot of people have said are unique and fun. So I'm excited about continuing to work on that.
Well, I appreciate you guys doing this with me today. I've got Alex and Eric here from Two Scoop Games, and we'll link to Two Scoop Games and some of your games in the show notes for people to find.
Great.
I appreciate you guys doing this. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back with Jen Looper to talk about the Internet of Things. Welcome back. I'm joined by Jen Looper from Telerik.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Now, Jen, I just got done talking to Eric and Alex from Two Scoop Games. We were talking about game development. I wanted to get your point of view on the show because you have a really cool app that brings gaming into the real world with the Internet of Things with IoT beacons. So can you share with us what you've created?
Before I started at Telerik, my boss, Burke Holland, contacted me and said, look, I have these Estimote beacons sitting around in the Palo Alto office. Do you want them? And he and I both knew that, I was starting to get really interested in the Internet of Things. And I just got really excited after I saw what these things were. And I, kind of jumped up and down and said, absolutely, send them along. So he sent them in the mail. And then I just started tinkering around with them and discovered that on the Telerik plugins repository, plugins.telerik.com, we have a Cordova plugin for Estimote beacons. So what they do is that you use the plugin in a mobile app, and it will allow your app to pick up a Bluetooth signal that is transmitted by the beacon, and you can do anything with it. You can grab the color of the beacon, you can tell the proximity of your app to the beacon, of your phone to the beacon, and you can create content based on where you are and how close you are to a certain beacon that's transmitting the signal. So for me, well, this is just the way my brain works. I immediately thought, oh, that's a scavenger hunt. So, and I'm not the only one who's thought this. If you go on the iOS store, the App Store, you'll find plenty of beacon-type scavenger hunt apps out there. But I just decided, let's just try and see if we can create this. So I went to the Telerik platform, platform.telerik.com, and I just created a hybrid mobile app. And I imported the Estimote plugin and just started, building what turned into a scavenger hunt type of app. So what happens with this app is that you need to create a hunt ID or a PIN, 6 digits. I just decided arbitrarily. Let's just create a 6-digit PIN. And that allows me to sort of geofence the users. So if you, for example, put in HNTPIN, hunt pin, that's going to say that the people that you invite to your scavenger hunt are going to use that pin to geofence themselves and be able to send push notifications to the other users of the app within that geofence. So in your scavenger hunt, people subscribe to that particular pin, and they start searching using the Cordova plugin for the beacons. And the way I designed the user interface is that when the users get close to a beacon within, I believe it's 1 meter, a button appears, and they can press the button, and then everyone within the geofenced group is notified that one of the beacons was found. And with this Estimote beacon pack, you have 3 beacons. They're designated by color. There's an ice beacon, a blueberry beacon, and a mint beacon, so they're kind of different colors. And the Cordova plugin will tell you, oh, I'm close to the ice beacon. A blue colored button appears in the user interface, and you press it, and then everyone is notified that that beacon was found. So it's just a very simple sort of little game that you can use. You hide your beacons in Easter eggs or anywhere in the yard, and people can subscribe to your hunt when they get to your house, and then you can run around and just get out into the sunshine and get away from your screen and enjoy. So it's just a fun little app to also, it's a great way for me to explore how to import plugins into a hybrid mobile app on the platform. It uses the Estimote plugin, like I mentioned. It also uses the social sharing plugin, because once you create your ID, your hunt pin, you can send an email via a pop-up screen saying, everyone download the app and come to my house, and we're going to start searching for beacons. So that's a plugin. And then there's the push notification plugin as well. So it's a three plugins that's in a small little app, but it works, it works. And I've been demoing this in conferences. It's my little dog and pony show at this point that I take to conference. And if you find a beacon, you get a little prize. I'm going to do this next week at QCon, actually. So it's a great way to get people up out of their chairs and just searching. It's really fun.
Yeah, I love the IoT stuff. It seems like it's such a creative new space, and there's so many cool things coming out of it. And this is one of them. I think it's a really neat way to get people up out of their chairs at a conference, and in addition, play, with your kids at home.
Yes.
Like you said, you hit them in Easter eggs and did an Easter egg hunt. So it's cool to see gaming, jump out of the screen and take part in something physical.
Yes. So if you go to developer.telerik.com, the TDN, Telerik Developer Network, you can find an article about this app, and you can download the source code. It's all up on GitHub, so it's all open source. Play with it, use it to learn, how to deal with plugins, how to deal with push notifications, which kind of is rocket science in the hybrid mobile world. If you can get push notifications working on your iOS app, that's money. So lots of good things to learn just with this sort of app. And I was actually talking to a gentleman who's doing exactly that. He's learning how to develop a hybrid mobile app coming from a completely different background, downloaded, that source code, and is trying to build. And he's got his Estimote beacons ready to roll. So it's kind of exciting to talk to people who are using and trying and just building.
What would some of the practical applications for IoT beacons be?
Well, Estimote, which is actually a Polish company, they're really pushing the envelope. They just had a really interesting blog post with an application for beacons that I never even thought of. But you could use beacons to encourage people to download apps, actually, for app discoverability, which is becoming a huge problem in the mobile app world, just avoiding having your app completely buried by all the crazy stuff that's in the App Store. If you are, for example, a retail store, you could use a beacon, and that would notify users, that there's something to download, there's some action item to do, to better experience, the physical nature of the store. So that was a good use case, I thought. There's a lot of other things that people are doing with beacons. There's a company called Contact, KONTAKT.io, I believe. They have their own beacons, but they're very interested in using them for social awareness and helping people with disabilities, and they placed beacons all over a city, and they're helping create apps so that blind people can navigate across streets and that sort of thing, by having the beacon trigger voice commands, that they can go this direction or that direction to get to point X or Y. People are using them for conferences. I believe at that conference, which is coming up in August, we're going to have a beacon-enabled app, maybe using estimates, maybe using something else, so that people can navigate through the conference area and be alerted of interesting things happening there. So it's really, if you need any possibility of like micro-locating content, using beacons is a great way to do it.
I think there's a lot of technology in the future we're going to see where things are picking up our locations based on our phones and serving us all kinds of interesting and fun stuff.
Definitely. And, with Apple Watch, that's another, with all the wearables, because the notifications are even more immediate. You're tapped on the wrist if you are notified of something. So it's really, it's like, hey. So you may or may not like that, but for retailers, it's just one more way of capturing attention.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things where we need to decide where convenience and creepiness lies.
Yes, the fine line. It is a very fine line.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think I need to get some of these beacons and take them to the next game jam and see what Alex and Eric from Two Scoop Games can do with them. I'd love to see them incorporate something from, like I said, taking it into the real world space and putting it in one of their games. I think it'd be really cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. In a game environment, you could have a virtual endless runner game, and then at some point, like a beacon could somehow encourage you to participate in the endless run. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, but if you could kind of enhance the physicality of the gaming experience with something that will get you up and moving, I think that's really fun. That'd be really cool.
Jen, I wanted to thank you for being part of the show today.
Sure, my pleasure.
You can find Jen's article at developer.telerik.com, as well as show notes and more of our podcast. Thanks, guys.